February 28th, 2010. I keep forgetting to say 2010. February 28th, 2010. This is your political animal. African Americans must stand with POTUS Obama. I'm sorry, President Obama. POTUS, President of the United States. I'm used to using that acronym when I blog with other bloggers on political and other websites. But President of the United States, POTUS. African Americans must stand with President Obama. After reading recent news reports about how some African Americans are becoming disenchanted with President Barack Obama, I feel very compelled to address this very important issue. As an African American man, I rejoice with much of the nation as it elected its first African American president. We were overjoyed as we saw the first rays of the rising sun of a new politics, based on hope and change and not just on fear and anger. Now, only a year later, many are becoming discouraged because they don't feel that the president has done enough for them. To these people, I address my blog. First, we must understand that any euphoria felt about Obama's election must be tempered by the reality that once an elected official actually takes office, he or she then must begin to make the often difficult decisions related to actually governing. This, in turn, will automatically cause the leader's popularity to decrease because he or she is no longer simply a candidate for office, but is now the one who is expected to implement the policies that he or she so ardently promised during the campaign. For example, if you'll notice, the First Lady Michelle Obama's popularity ratings are still at about 68%, while her husband's, the president's, are slightly below 50%. Why is this? It is so because First Lady Obama doesn't have to make the difficult and often controversial policy decisions that her husband is charged to make. For example, the First Lady recently initiated a fight against childhood obesity. Well, that's good, but that's not going to be controversial. Republicans and Democrats and Independents, black, white, Latino, Asians, etc., everybody will get on that bandwagon. So that's not as controversial as, say, healthcare, war in Afghanistan, war on terror, cutting taxes, raising taxes, etc. So she doesn't have to face the political bullets that her husband has to face. She doesn't have to visit Capitol Hill and engage in political playoff battles with intransigent Republicans over such issues as health care, national security, terrorism, full employment, taxes, the national budget, etc. As a result, she enjoys the luxury of not offending the different constituencies who are or may be directly or indirectly affected by her husband's policy decisions. Furthermore, I think that to a certain extent it is a flawed logic to base a leader's ability to lead on how popular he or she is, because people are by nature both selfish and fickle, and their view of the leader's effectiveness will too often be shaded by their own selfish desires and political preferences. For example, no matter how well President Obama may govern, many Republicans will give him a negative rating simply because he is not a member of their party, just as many Democrats chided former President Bush simply because he is a Republican. Another example of this parochial thinking is evident when we consider how members of Congress react when projects in their districts are being threatened by budget cuts. The same polls who decry the Obama administration as being on an insane spending spree will kick and scream when projects in their districts are threatened because their political lifeblood depends to a large extent on them being able to bring home the economic bacon to their constituents. This undeniable fact applies to Democrats as well as Republicans, as evident by the decision of Democratic Senator Mary Landrieu of Louisiana to join Louisiana Republicans in rejecting President Obama's plan to reduce tax breaks for oil and gas companies, two industries crucial to Louisiana's struggling economy, especially post-Katrina. But as it pertains to African Americans, I have to be a bit more stern in my assessment of their feelings about the president's first year in office. The latest figures that we have indicate that African American unemployment is 16.5%, or almost 7 percentage points above the national average. As a formerly and sometimes presently oppressed minority, we have always led the nation in negative categories such as infant mortality, heart disease, HIV/AIDS, incarceration rates, diabetes, heart attacks, strokes, homicide victimization, out-of-wedlock births, paternal absenteeism, ad nauseum. So, such a high unemployment rate shouldn't really surprise us. But what does alarm me is the fact that many African Americans are becoming disenchanted with President Obama, even though he inherited more than President Franklin Delano Roosevelt. Whereas President Roosevelt inherited a national economy on the brink. President Obama inherited that plus 2 wars. So to a certain extent, he inherited more than both FDR and President Lincoln, who inherited a nation on the brink of the Civil War, but one whose economy was largely intact. You had a slave economy in the South, an emerging industrial economy in the North. But to my fellow African Americans, I have to ask the question, what do we have a right to expect from President Obama? I hope that none of us thought that he was God, because he certainly is not. I hope that none of us thought that with his inauguration, every vestige of racism would suddenly disappear from the American life and consciousness, because it certainly hasn't. As a matter of fact, in some ways it has increased, as his ascendancy to 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue has served as a clarion call for the Tom Tancredos, Sarah Palin's, Rush Limbaugh's, Sean Hannity's, Ann Coulter's, Laura Ingram's, along with the rest of their right-wing Tea Party ilk, to proclaim that they, quote-unquote, want their America back. Their America. I thought America was over 300 million strong, with Asians, Latinos, Native Americans, African Americans, Asian continental Indians, gay, straight, etc. But they want their America back, which is evidently code language for we want America to return what it used to be, led by white people. My fellow African Americans, I have to close now, but hear me clearly. I suspect that anywhere from 3 to 5% of our unemployment, and that is probably a conservative estimate, is due to circumstances beyond anyone's control but ours. Let me ask you the following. Is it President Obama's fault that many African Americans can't pass a drug screen, which has now become a prerequisite for many jobs? Is it his fault that many African Americans, upon obtaining gainful employment, cannot keep their jobs because they cannot pass random drug tests? Is it the president's fault that many African Americans have poor job interviewing skills? That many show up to job interviews looking ghetto fabulous instead of looking professional? Is President Obama to be faulted for the poor verbal skills possessed by many African Americans? Some so poorly skilled that they cannot verbalize a complete sentence without saying, you know, at least 20 times before they can complete a basic sentence? Should we seek to impeach the 44th president because so many prospective job applicants have a poor work ethic, even to the point, or prospective, I should have said, prospective job applicants have a poor work ethic, even to the point of not being able to show up for the job interview on time, or having obtained the job to show up for work on time on a regular basis? Or maybe we should hold the nation's chief executive responsible for the fact that so many African Americans' writing skills are barely above the quality that one would see in cell phone text, on Facebook, or other social networking websites. Long story short, President Obama is not the president of the United African American States of America, but of the United States of America. And he must be careful to not give even the appearance of showing favoritism toward one ethnic group over another. I'll give an example. He recently signed legislation that would provide more money for historically black colleges and universities. A noble thing to do. Great. I'm glad he did it. I support it. But you know his critics are gonna crawl all over him. They're going to crawl all over him because they're going to claim that he is showing favoritism toward African Americans. So just get ready for that. His charge is to uphold the Constitution of the United States, and we as African Americans should look at his example as a father, husband, tireless laborer, and scholar as a blessing from Almighty God. To expect him to feed 35 million African Americans with a few loaves of social political bread is not only blasphemy, but is also patently unrealistic and unfair. That's my opinion. What's yours?